happy Saturday morning to everybody. Welcome to the Bench Clear family and the Hobby Hotline family. I'm joined today by cousin Tony and cousin Dr. Beckett. So good to have you guys today. We are kind of near the end of the year, so I want to touch on some late year topics that are kind of winding up now and get everybody's input on their thoughts of the hobby this past year. So if you're watching, please join along and let me put some of those links out there. But more importantly, how are you guys this morning? Tony?
Pretty good. Just a little disappointed with the current score of the soccer match. I don't know if it's changed, but other than that, everything's pretty good. Heading to the Philly show after this, so should be a good day.
Dr. Beckett?
Doing great, cousin Danny.
Well, thank you. I believe you're the Sultan of Stats, the Prince of Pricing, and the King of Cards. So I owe you one. But in all seriousness, what have you been up to, hobby, sports-wise?
Well, me, it's been actually well, as far as hobby wise, it's I'm kind of giddy over. I bought the first uncut sheet in my collection, so that's going to
What
be a
was
pretty
it?
big. It's 96, 97 tops basketball base sheet, so it's got the Iverson, Kobe, Ray Allen rookies on there. So pretty excited about that actually.
Are you getting it framed, or how are you leaving
I
it?
am, yeah. I got to figure that out now. So I don't know, like just kind of one of those things. Do I go to a pro or do I go to there's a Michaels, it's like a craft store here that they do framing. So I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we get there, but
Just don't
other
let them
than,
laminate it.
Yes. Actually, Dr. Beckett, what do you think of uncut sheets?
I got a bunch of them, and they're a problem when you get more than one, Tony, because you run out of
that's
wall
yeah.
space. But that's a great one. That's a great one that you got there. But I've got some. I don't have enough wall space. So, and they're hard to mail. They're hard to transact, but they're really cool. They're really cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I like the artistic value on certain sets. You know, when you put it up on the wall, it's really a piece of art.
yeah, that's
And getting
exactly how I look at it.
getting them cut is no easy matter.
Well, you touched on this before. It's special cutting, and don't you have the tool or
Well, no, I mean it's the
a
the manufacturers do it. They cut a whole bunch of sheets at once. I mean, the setup to get the registration just right to make it perfectly centered. It's a lot of work to get the first sheet lined up. And so if you do it one at a time, I won't say it's prohibitive for a really great sheet, but it's very expensive. And if you do it by hand or do it a homemade remedy, even with a kind of a fancy cutter, it's still, if you're a little bit off in terms of your right angles, if it's not 90-degree corners, you can't get them graded.
Mm,
interesting?
yeah.
Well,
Well,
Tony, it sounds like you're keeping it on the wall.
yeah, I was about to say, needless to say that, yeah, I have no plans of cutting it. It's just going to be framed and it'll be hanging behind me. There's going to have to be some redecorating going on down here. But yeah, and that's what I was afraid of. I was like, if I get one, does that mean I'm going to want another and another and another? So we'll see.
Well, that's what depresses the value of sheets because sheets should be really worth way more than the sum of the parts. But it's rare cases that they are because in order to break it up to get the parts, there's a cost and there's a potential loss. You can, if you mess it up, you mess it up. You can't
Yeah,
I
undo
was
it.
yeah,
I was curious about the value of the uncut sheets themselves without cutting them up. I always thought there should be more value, in that whole sheet than it seems the industry really likes.
Hypothetically, yes, but the fallback, though, I just chop them up. There's some additional cost there. So it's again, if it's a really rare, Tony, you've done the right thing. That's a very nice display piece. So it's going to stand on its own merit.
yeah. That's why I
Absolutely.
was like, it was weird. I was like, man, this whole sheet costs less than maybe just the one card. But I just again, I'm just really excited about it, and it looks really nice, and you know, just can't wait to get it framed and hung up on the wall.
Absolutely. Well, there is not a ton of hobby news, but there's a couple of things that have come out recently. There's been a slew of partnerships. And this is something actually Dr. Beckett and I feel like we've talked about on almost every show we've been on for the last year or so, is the ecosystems and everybody kind of playing musical chairs. And so there's been a couple recently that I wanted to kind of throw out there just to kind of show people. Um, First one is the Collectible and eBay partnership. Collectible will be selling assets, not just fractionally, but directly on eBay. And they will be storing, I think, $5 million worth of cards to start out in the eBay vault. So that is one of the partnerships. Here's another one: PSA and Whatnot. Now you can buy your cards on Whatnot, and one of the options is to have them sent directly to PSA without having to get them home first. So that was just announced yesterday, the day before, and that's very interesting. The Whatnot platform seems to be pivoting a little bit, and I think it's going to be kind of interesting to see where they end up. The other one is PWCC. The amount of grading options that they now include with their vaulting service. But one of the reasons I wanted to bring them up is they actually work with Mike Baker Authentications, the MBA. And as far as I know, that's one of the few that are doing raw authenticating and keeping them raw. I know eBay's got their authentication program. But I guess I just wanted to kind of get your guys' thoughts and start with you, Dr. Beckett, kind of on the industry, either as a whole or any of these deals specifically.
Well, I mean, not to be a contrary, but I wouldn't call them partnerships. I would call them working relationships. Partnerships sounds very grand, but it's basically each entity is doing their specialty. They're preferred relationships. If they are completely exclusive, then again, it sounds a little bit like a partnership. But partnership to me means we're going to split the profits. I don't think they're going to split the profits. I think they're going to each do their own thing. And if there is some shared rev share, whether it's 50-50, a lot of times the bigger quote unquote partner doesn't exactly share 50-50. And so, but I think it's great. I mean, it means people are aligning. They're joining teams now. So the hobby has gotten more and more relational. And if you're an isolated entity out there, it could be pretty lonely. So PWCC, I noticed they now have a grading deal with SGC even.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they have kind of all the big players except for PSA, which is the biggest. But again, like I said, I wouldn't call them partnerships, but they're working relationships. And especially if you can, with PWCC play in the field like that, they're covering a lot of bases. But collectors and PSA not being involved means they probably are doing their own thing. It's too much stepping on their other sister companies' toes.
Yeah, I think PSA and Golden, which is also collectors, have a deal in marketplace very similar to the PWCC, and so that's another ecosystem that I didn't put up there. That's 100% right. Tony, what's it like for you as somebody in the last year or since the pandemic's probably gotten whiplash? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I that's what I just wrote down. I do like the streamlining kind of way that it's gonna work. It definitely helps. Like Whatnot, I don't purchase on Whatnot, or I haven't yet, but that's probably kind of cool that you can just buy it and it gets sent off, and you don't have to worry about shipping it a few times. So um, it's just interesting to see how that's all going to work. But I do like the kind of the streamlining effect that it seems to be having. So.
And I guess a lot of this are tied into the vaults. So what's to me, it's always the question is what's the benefit of the vault to the collector? Somebody who likes to see their cards and hold their cards. There are pros and cons, Dr. Beckett, I guess I'll kind of start with you for both for your cards and from kind of a bigger viewpoint on insurance and safety. How do you look at vaults and knowing that there are a lot of them right now, and a lot of them are in different states and different tax rules, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, if you're buying a card, and there could be a preferred tax advantage to buying it and having it domiciled in Oregon or Delaware, one of these sales tax free states. But the cards I already own, why do I need to put them in a vault? I've got them in a safe deposit box for the really valuable ones, and I can go see them anytime I want to. The Beckett Media has a vault. I could put stuff there, and that's not far away. But again, I'm not a big vault customer right now, because I think when it's free to put it in there, then they can hold me hostage taking it out. And if I'm not interested in it, if I wanted to put a big buy it now price on it, I would do it. And and that, to me, that'd be a good strategy. But I'm not in that mode right now. When I'm selling my 1% a month, Danny and Tony, it's not the best 1% each month. It's the worst 1% each month. So I won't get to the vault-worthy stuff for about 99 months.
Exactly. And in fact, that's why there's other sites to sell lower end cards. And I think that, let's jump into that a second. I don't know that everybody's familiar with how many lower end cards are actually transacted and how many platforms there actually are to transact those cards. I think everybody defaults to eBay, but obviously ComC, there's buysportscards.com, and I don't know what else.
Lots.
Exactly.
Marketplace. I mean, there's a lot of cards being sold that are my slabs. There's just
Right. So if we're not vaulting cards, I guess how many different sites does everybody really shop? If you're looking for cards, Tony, how many sites are you going to shop? Or are you just in eBay?
It's very heavy eBay with one or two other sites mixed in, just because old habit. I'm used to eBay, and unless something drastically changes, I'll probably always go to there. But one thing I want to say on the vaults, and I've seen a lot of people in the chat saying it too. I want my stuff. Like, I can't imagine having a card and not being able to enjoy the whole part. To me, the biggest part of when I buy a card is when it comes in the mail and I open it and I get to see it, touch it, feel it. Where if I just buy it and it goes in a vault, then I just get to look at it on the computer. I'm like, yeah, that's mine. But I don't know. It, like somebody said, it's like getting a star named after you. Yeah, I get it. If you have, I mean, I'm not playing in the space where my cards need to kind of be vaulted. I mean, if you have a $1 billion card, then maybe, but even then, I'd still want to have it just because it's mine. And like I said, and then there's the whole hostage aspect to it. We don't know okay, you got to get it out, but it's going to be this, that, or whatever. So, I'm definitely, for now, I'm like, yeah, I'm good on the whole vaulting thing. I want my stuff. Yeah. So,
yeah, I think one of the few advantages to vaulting is right now, they are offering some cheaper deals if you're going to pull your cards out, and you want them in the next couple of months, and you can wait past their promo time. A lot of them are offering, if you buy from them, some money off, 3 months free, and then you can get your card. So that might be one of the scenarios where I would shop for a deal and wait a couple months and then take the card, because I'm going to pay taxes at one point or another. And from that standpoint, do you guys trust vaults? Because that's something else I'm hearing.
Well, that's one of the reasons why in this alignment and teaming up, it's not just a vault entity that had no connection to other aspects of the hobby. I wouldn't say it'd be suspect, but if eBay messes up in their vault, it messes up their whole business. If Golden or PwC, CC, any of these Beckett vault, if they mess up in their vault and mess up big time, which isn't too hard when you've got really expensive cards, it jeopardizes their whole business. That gives me comfort. They're not going to mess up. In fact, if they did mess up, they'd want to make good, because, just a special vaulting thing that was, who knows who's behind it. I wouldn't do that for sure. I definitely would not do that.
And actually, that's Tony. I want to get your opinion, but the good comment here is, in the business world, when you have bankruptcy and creditors, is the card an asset of the vaulting company? Where is the line of creditors and the collector? Should the vault go belly up? I think that's a fair question. And one of the reasons I think we all have hesitation, where you can go to a safety deposit box if you really need to. Tony,
I'm not sure these vaulting companies are set up to where if they go belly up, that you have to buy your cards back because you never sold them to them. They're just storing them there. And
would
so
they
there was
would they
some,
get would they get held as assets in a bankruptcy?
they're not assets.
Well, that's
They're my asset that they're holding on to. They don't. There's no aspect that it's their aspect. They're a warehouse for what is mine.
So
See, there's just too much. There's too much. What if? What's this? What's that? It's just too many unanswered questions for me to want to jump in. Maybe later on, but yeah, right now it's just not something I definitely not interested. Just because there's just too many variables.
and this is a good comment. Have these vaulting companies moved away from the borrowing off the value cards of the vault? Yeah, they would loan a percentage against the cards, especially when the industry was very hot. It always seemed extremely risky. Yeah, and they're not just the only ones. There's people in the hobby, content creators and other stuff that have been pushing it. They are just simple loans with the cards as collateral. Just to be clear, there's nothing special about baseball card loans. Tony, your thoughts, on is there ever a situation where you could see yourself not holding or keeping your own cards?
I don't think so. Again, I just like to come down here and look at my stuff and go through it all. And I mean, heck, how do I even know if I put in a vault that it's even there? I don't know. It could be in somebody's basement. I have no access to the vault. I can't see it. So yeah, no, I again, unless something drastically changes or in my collection, but no, I like to have my cards. It's just that's kind of the
Tony,
whole point of collecting them.
but every objection that you can come up with, Tony, or that I could come up with, or Danny, these vaulting companies are smart because if Tony, if your only heartburn is that you won't be able to see your card, they'll say, if it's an expensive of a card, we'll have a camera on it. It's a
Yeah, I
live
guess.
feed for you
I
at
don't know.
all times. You'll be able to show it to your friends or look at it. It'll pop in, make sure it's there. Now, if they did a switcheroo, I don't think so. But like I said,
Yeah.
these vault companies need to make it on volume. They need to make it on not just holding the cards forever, but in and out and things like that. And as long as that works, it's and loaning on cards that you're holding in your hand, that's probably a good business too. As long as you're not loaning to value at 90% or something.
Yeah, I think it's been running like 60% depending on the market.
Or less. In fact, that might be a nice barometer of the industry. What are people loaning against for certain cards? That's maybe a better barometer of what cards are really worth. Is if you got a 52 Topps Mantle, you probably get a good loan on that. But if it's something that's a very much newer basketball card, even if it's limited, something in the last couple of years, you're probably you won't get as much loan value on it.
Yeah.
Look, wouldn't that be cool though? It's like a hostage camera. It's like, oh, look at my card. It's still sitting there.
Okay.
Maybe that's mine. But
they're in prison, so vaults really are prisons for cards.
There you go.
I mean, well, it's to keep you in the ecosystem.
Solitary confinement.
Right.
Yeah.
Only for the ones that have been bad.
No, actually, the cards are with their other brother and sister cards. They're in with a whole bunch of other good cards. So,
yeah.
But when I went to the Beckett Vault and I got a little tour there, it's not obvious whose cards are whose.
Really?
Okay.
They're just there. So it does say they didn't say here's where this can be from the Dr. James Beckett collection. I suppose they could do that, but it's more utilitarian than that. They've got some cards kind of mounted, and then they've got some cards, in a like locked drawers and things like that. So it's not a museum; it's a vault.
But that's interesting. So, I mean, without getting into too much detail, what is the organizational system?
Well, again, I'm not the boss anymore, but
Right.
look at the pictures from the eBay vault. If they really got going, they would need 1 million square feet because it looks like they've got like one card, a few cards on the wall. There's not a density of like my wall behind me, they're packed.
Yeah.
The vaults I've seen have one card per square foot on the wall. I mean, they're a lot of white space there, which I think makes it look more like an art gallery. But if you have thousands of cards in your vault, you can't give each one of them a square foot, on the wall. You're going to have to put some in kind of like safe deposit boxes. Now we're back to the bank concept. I've got to go to my bank, get it out of the vault. Of course, no light is damaging it, and then I get it out and look at it. So,
can you talk about the insurance, just for, I guess, from a general standpoint for both you and the vaulting?
I think the vaults are insured.
Right. So you don't have to.
You don't need to be insured in one sense, and probably the vaults also have, like when we got started with BGS. The insurance carriers a lot of times will cover transit, not just when we have it, but when it's getting there and going back. So you're not having to buy insurance from FedEx at high rates, one-off kinds of things. So kind of a blanket thing that all of our vault cards are going to be covered while they're in the vault, on the way to the vault, on the way from the vault. And you have to follow their procedures in order to be compliant with these insurance companies. You probably have to mail it out a certain way, but it's very rare that things get lost in the mail. It's not unheard of, but most third-party insurance are very profitable.
Yeah. Well,
so the vaults if you're in a bank vault, I don't think you have to have insurance for cards that are in a bank vault. I don't think you've got to have insurance for cards that are in one of these third-party vaults. If you've got cards in your home, most of these insurance companies make you list all the cards that you have that are above a certain value.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta document that you have them, and but if it's your show inventory, that's problematic. You're bringing it out, taking it back, and I lost this card when you actually sold it, or you bought a new one and you got to make an addendum to your insurance. So above X dollars, whether that's 100, 1,000, 10,000, whatever, the insurance company surely are going to make you list it. But the $2 cards, on the other hand, a lot of my $2 cards or $5 cards, I ship them to ComC, and I'm sure ComC has insurance because those are my cards. If something happened to my cards there, if their place burned down, I would get a settlement check. I don't think I'd get 100 cents on the dollar, but I'd get a settlement check from their insurance company.
Okay. Well, we do have a guest that called in. I am lucky enough to actually have made friends with our guest recently, so I'm thrilled to see him in. Let's add Ziggy now. Ziggy, let's get you all wired in here.
Hey guys, thank you very much. Friendly with everybody. Love this.
Michael, good to see you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Beckett. Appreciate you guys. Let me come in real quickly. Just wanted to share some thoughts on the vault. So I heard a great story on Go GTS Live this last week about a guy who got cards that were left in a bank deposit box, where the bank apparently had surrendered it. The reason I bring this story up is I point out banks are the only ones that legally have to protect property. I don't believe that's the case with any other vault. So read the fine print in every other vault, because most of them, like Dr. Beckett mentioned, if something bad happens, you're going to have to struggle to get your cards back. There's no path of legality. So I would recommend a bank vault way over any other vault. I also like ComC as a vault. So check out that story. Also, pay attention to what's going with StarStock right now. They are a vault. Now they're charging $5. What's going to happen there? In my opinion, mass exodus and mass liquidation, right?
Well, so, Ziggy, to your point, I think this is where we started the conversation. Is the industry going to see more, mergers and, at a larger level to, is it the cream that's going to rise to the top, and the companies that we're uncomfortable with, everybody's going to be uncomfortable with, and they're not going to stay in business?
I think it's a lot more bankruptcy.
Okay? Right. Well, one way or the other.
Why merge? I mean, why buy some of these dying assets? Right? Like, tell me, I love StarStock. I was a huge StarStock fan, but why would you touch StarStock? Right? In fact, there's a bad name. And I'll also say the other one. I don't like PWCC. They're the ones that started this vault thing when they were kicked out of eBay. and everybody started vaulting. Alt came out with a vault. Golden came out with a vault.
Yep.
The other dark secret here, who's going to give you cash for your cards on a loan? No one I know, no bank, no institution. The only person who's going to give you cash for your cards is a vault. Why? Because they know they lock that in. Also, I'll tell you too, when you sell a card in a vault, if it doesn't sell, if it doesn't get a payment, they continue to list. You have to forcefully beg and stop them from listing it. There is nothing, in my opinion, positive about any of the vaulting companies. They all extract transactions away from the collector, right? They all based on this paranoia of insurance. My other comment is, show me a successful insurance claim. I want to see one where you had a mantle with some valuation where it was destroyed and your insurance claim came in and covered it for dollar for dollar. It doesn't happen. At least I've never seen it. So the fear and uncertainty that vaults tell you about, well, you don't want to protect your card. Who's going to just get an insurance rider? Just like Dr. Beckett said, you have a wife. Does she have a ring? Put the same thing with your special cards on that. But I think we're going to see a lot of bankruptcy and a lot of closing in the future of these businesses. And I think this is good for us in the hobby. It's not bad. You're going to hear people complain, but this is positive. The last comment I just want to make, and I'm just curious your thoughts, guys. No one is talking about the Montgomery Club next week and why this is so big, in my opinion. In the past, and I'm not a Montgomery Club member because every time it's been introduced, it sells out. They limit how many people get in. Now, I understand. I know the 50 shows in here, or 70 show guys in here, I forget his name, but he commented that they had overpriced this last year. Now they've reset the price. Here's the other thing they've done. They've opened a window. So they're not going to sell out this year. At least I don't think they will. Okay. So in my opinion, I think more people should be talking about this. This is the future. This is your opportunity to be direct to fanatics. You can join the membership. You make your decision. It's not an investment advice, but you have an opportunity to be direct and get products early on and decide what you want to do with them and give them your feedback directly. So I encourage people to look at the Montgomery Club. It also cuts out all the middlemen, right? The reason
Ziggy, real quick, will you do me a favor when we talk at the end of the show on the year in review and the year looking forward? That's actually a great point on something that's changed. Will you make sure you get that in the comments for people who are watching this again later?
Love to. I love to comment.
No, you're very, very quiet. Never express. One of the challenges, and on a show like this, is hitting everything. But that's a good thing for people who are interested in that type of collecting. And we're going to be talking about kind of, the last year and moving forward and the shift, I think, from the pandemic collectors into kind of moving forward. So I want to make sure that people who watch this.
I absolutely will. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to drop off. I just wanted to mention the Montgomery Club thing, get your thoughts, give you my thoughts on the vault.
Run
into a basketball game for my son, got a birthday for another son. Really great day. And I'm a huge fan, guys. So please keep it up. Thank you very much. Danny, thank you very much. I want to say to everybody, Danny's one of those people who I guess we had a miscommunication. I was an asshole. And he called me, and I appreciate that because I think the number one thing we should all take away from this is communication, right? Pick up a DM, pick up a phone, leverage a friend. We all have mutual friends. Communication's key. Thank you, Danny, very much. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate that. Good seeing you, buddy.
See you guys.
See you.
Can I respond to Ziggy that he can listen to it later because he gets on a roll? That's the way he does it, and I think he's uniquely vocal. That somebody, he says some things that people ought to say. But first of all, he's a little bit of contrary sometimes. And basically, the bandwagon effect for all these vaults is making the social, you get the feeling that everybody's vaulting because everybody's advertising in all these vaults that it must be a good deal because everybody's doing it. Well, that's how America gets in trouble when everybody's doing something and it looks like it's okay because everybody's doing it. Everybody's doing it because it's lucrative. And it works, but nobody's holding a gun to anybody's head. But if everybody's, where are you vaulting? Where are you vaulting? Well, then people are going to choose up. Hopefully they're going to make good choices of where they go. The other point Danny made is about, when a company kind of gets in trouble or they're possibly going to go bankrupt and all that stuff. I believe there will be less bankruptcies than he thinks, but I think there will be acquisitions. And we shouldn't think that a bad brand cannot be acquired, that it just needs to go in the dumpster because they have customers. The customers are not necessarily bad. And so I really feel like if a company's messed up and they're going to be maybe bankrupt, there's going to be some larger player in the industry that's going to acquire the assets and the customers of that brand. And they're going to quietly dump that brand in the toilet, but they're going to keep the business aspect of it, and they're going to rescue that brand but throw it away. And then lastly, on the Montgomery Club, this is a fanatics influenced movement of Montgomery Club being less exclusive and more being just direct to consumer. So they've chopped the price in half or whatever they've done. And so they're all about getting more names and buying histories and things like that. So this is predictable. And I agree, everybody should consider it. I don't think there will necessarily be a cutoff, whether it's 10,000 or 100,000. Why would I mean, a collector might be upset that his Montgomery Club set is doesn't have extra value because it's there's so many of them, but fanatics would be overjoyed to get money to get customers and their preferences that they can cross market to other things. So I see that as I agree. I think a lot more people are going to do it, and I don't think they'll cut them off. So I think Ziggy's right. I don't know that I'm going to get in line on Monday morning or Wednesday morning or whatever it is. I saw that. I thought, do I want to wake up early or do something right at the get-go? I just don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you take away some of the exclusivity, you can see the fanatics' fingerprints. And one of the things in general is I keep hearing people talk about Topps and Topps Decision. And Dr. Beckett just made a good point, guys. Topps is fanatics. There's no more Topps Decisions. There's no more Topps programs. Everything related to Topps is a fanatics entity. So all these decisions that Topps are making, if you don't like fanatics but you like Topps, just remember they are the same thing at this point. So, I mean, Tony, do you find that where people talk about Topps and fanatics like two different companies?
Yeah, they always like you just hear Topps. I'm like, hey, and Zach, appreciate you, brother. Yeah, it's like, wait, but they're the same people. So I think once it becomes officially official, where it's like, then it'll just kind of phase out and it's just be, fanatics or whatever. But yeah, for now, it's kind of seems that way. I don't.
Tony, they're not necessarily the same people. I mean, that's the thought.
That's true.
But really, there's fanatics, kind of the card aspect, the new entity, and then there's fanatics memorabilia. And fanatics memorabilia is way more visible right now because they're the ones doing all the auctions and all that stuff. And so I think they're letting Topps have oversight. They're letting Topps do what they do. Now, if they make additional acquisitions and they have more than one card company, then I think you'll see, it'll be interesting to see how they organize that. But I really think they're letting Topps, I mean, they're giving some directives, but I think they're letting Topps do what they do. And again, Topps is not the Titanic, but it's hard to, I mean, Topps has 70 years of history or whatever it is. I mean, they do what they do. So they're going to be course correcting, but it's going to be, like I said, toward having more customers. And so these sets that you're buying that you're getting in the Montgomery Club, if they're half price what they were before, but you can't flip them, it's not, that was part of the allure.
Yeah, really.
I was going to ask you, how do you feel like, how do you think that conversation works with fanatics and Topps where they kind of just, okay, we're going to let you do your thing, but we'll lean on you a little bit like this. Like, how do you think that all goes down?
It's not leaning. It's just saying, we want you to move toward, we want to increase your market share and mind share. We want you to have more customers, because if they're going to double or 10 times the hobby, they need more customers. And so lowering the price without, it's still, you're buying something that's very high profit margin. You're just stamping some regular cards and you're putting a sapphire coating or something on other ones. So you're not really doing a lot of creative other than these are just, slight variations. So
well, I think they should add the hobby hotline cards to the Montgomery collection.
Exactly. We need
bring back that value.
They need to be chromed.
For the record, that's overdue. I want to talk to our hobby hotline manufacturer. We deserve a prism, a chrome, and definitely parallels.
Well, he's a real mensch. You talk to him and see if you can convince him.
Thank you, Dr. Beckett. John Newman and I are launching a new podcast called Card Menches. It will be on YouTube and podcast everywhere. It'll be live Friday the 9th is our first episode, so this coming Friday. Thank you for mentioning that.
Did you guys practice that ahead of time, or because that was seamless? That was fantastic.
No, in fact, I'm blushing a little bit because I wasn't going to. So I think you got me from the beginning.
Well, you guys are going to make it fun. Two fun guys. They're going to be talking because you're not going to be limited to the hobby and not be limited to sports. And I think people love that intersection.
Well, thank you. We're very excited for it. John and I have a habit of spending a couple hours doing on the phone what I think we're just going to do on camera and record now. And
well,
that's
some advice I have for you is if you basically, I think the shows will be manageable if you only have one microphone.
So
if you have two, you've got a big problem.
Well, I did tell him that this is not his show, and I am now allowed to cut him off, and vice versa. We both need it.
You can tell him all you want.
Well, I think we're going to build in a mute button on each other, so we can just, right.
Cool.
Our biggest problem, I think, is going to be keeping it to a 3-hour episode. So we're going to do actually 2 months of Dr. Beckett's show in one episode.
Okay.
Ready. And actually, if I can promo it, we will have occasional guests on the show, and I think Dr. Beckett has agreed to come on, so he will be our first Mensch guest.
Okay.
So thank you. All right, moving back to the collectible world. John, they're all John Newman shows. Yes, they are. So one of the things I want to talk about is actually subgraders, because we were talking about the vaults earlier, but subgraders play this in-between role, and I know more people are getting into the subgrading. When you submit cards for grading, and Dr. Beckett, you might have a totally different experience than the rest of the world on this, but when you submit cards for grading, do you guys like to do it in person, with a subgrader? Do you mail them in directly? Do you go to a pre-screener? Kind of, I guess, Tony, what's your system?
I've done both. I've done the pre-screen stuff. Actually, it was at the Philly show. People were set up and doing the Dallas card investors. And I was new to the hobby, so I was like, oh, if these guys, I think it was at $5 or $10 a card, whatever it was, and kind of let them run through it and get their opinion. And I did, and I sent in a couple of cards, and I think they were 2 for 3, given, there was like 2 9s and a 10 or something like that. And they were pretty good. And then the second time, and then the other time, I've only done it twice now, where I sent it in on our own, and it was, card came back. It was an 86 Jordan, which came back a 7. And I mean, we didn't, by that time, it was Oz and I, we sent it in. We didn't know anything about prepping the card or anything like that. But again, I mean, this card is really old, so I'm not sure what we could have done to it to get, but again, that's just being new. But now I think there is some value to talking to someone ahead of time who kind of knows what people are expecting, because I don't know, I was like, I don't know what they're looking for. So I think there is value to doing it that way.
Well, what I like about your response, Tony, is that each person needs to look in the mirror and say, here's what I know and here's what I don't know. And if you're a good grader yourself, then go ahead, and you don't need a pre-screen to pay that extra fee or that extra step if you can grade, but most people can't. They miss things because of the rose-colored glasses or whatever. So I am not a good enough grader. On the other hand, if I'm submitting a card that is not going to be a problem if it's a grade lower than what I think. In other words, if you're submitting a Jordan rookie and it comes back a 7, you didn't waste your grading fee. In fact,
right, yeah,
you're still there. But there are certain cards that are more plentiful, certainly base cards. If it comes back even a 9, you didn't even break even on your grading fee. And so, on the other hand, I've had a couple of guys that I've thought, hey, what can you come over and pre-grade some Saturday afternoon? And I really, I'd rather do it that way. Then you could look at a whole bunch of cards and make a pile for, hey, these could go, but they'd be lower valued cards, because I'm willing to take a chance on a more expensive card. If it's there's a metric, if you're paying, if it's a $500 card, and again, I'm talking about BGS where you're not getting upcharged if it's above $4.99 or whatever their threshold is, but you're going to pay the same thing, and you're betting that it is. But to have one of the graders come over, that's conflict. You can't do that. But a former grader, I have some friends that are former graders, and I'm not sure. I don't know, guys. I don't know what the financial arrangement would be. They're my cards, but if I ask somebody to come review my cards for what should be submitted, to pay them by the hour or by the card, I would be willing to do that, and that'd be kind of fun. Now, again, whether they would have some incentive to pre-grade accurately. I've always wondered some of the pre-grading services, if they tell you, they're going to get you to submit it, and then they get, they probably make it a little bit of a rev share on their submission as well. So,
well, that's
a good point.
Yeah, when there was a specific submitter who also does pre-grading that I wanted to test out, because Dr. Becker, you're exactly right. You don't know how lenient or how tight or what the motivation is. And I also only do this for modern cards. Vintage, I'll submit directly because the grade is what the grade is.
Yeah.
But I sent in 35 modern cards to this company, and I say this as a compliment. To their credit, they only suggested, I think it was 6 cards go to grading out of 35. Wow. Now, these are modern cards, so I do want 9s and 10s, so they were probably on the more conservative side. But I would much rather have that answer than get back a bunch of 7s or 8s when you're talking specifically on a modern, lower price card, where that delta for me, really has to be a 9 or 10 to make it worth it.
You can get a double whammy there, Danny. Is it when you get back this modern card that's in a 7? Mm-hmm. Number one, that 7, the grading fee may be more than what the 7 is worth.
Yep.
And further, the card in a 7 holder is worth less than a raw card.
Exactly.
So you've got double jeopardy there. So if you crack it out, you have a chance of injuring yourself too. So,
or the card, and then you're deciding if you're resubmitting it and paying again. I mean, it just piles on. And so that's one of the reasons I think if you can find somebody you trust, I'd rather be a hair conservative and grade 5 or 6 cards, which to their credit all came back 9s or higher, than the other 30 cards, which they could have billed me for. And I could have ended up, in a bad situation like we talked about, but I would have never used that company again. Now that company I feel comfortable using on a regular basis, and I can send my clients cards there and feel not perfect, but feel pretty good that I'm going to get modern grades where I want them. So, this company happens to not charge for that service, but they don't do any cleaning and prepping. And that was going to be my next question is the cleaning and prepping of modern cards has become a much bigger topic recently. Where do you fall on it, Dr. Beckett and Tony? Dr. Beckett?
Tony, you want to go first?
Sure. Cleaning and prepping. So to me, as long as you're not doing something crazy where you're putting, and again, I don't know too much about it because it's like just something that I'm still learning. I'm like, man, what do you mean? Oh, cleaning, I know that they wipe it off, but if you're starting to put chemicals and all that kind of stuff, then that kind of maybe starts getting into a little bit of an area where you might be seen as altering the card. But as far as like prepping it and cleaning it, I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, if you're trying to get the best grade you can, you gotta at least shine it up a little bit, no? But as far as, like I said, I know that there's some type of, they can put wax on it. So is that like almost putting like a new surface? That's probably not kind of up to par.
Is that too far, or is a slight cut too far?
I think that might be a little too far because it's basically like putting on, and I could be wrong. I don't do it. I'm not sure, but it's almost like putting on a new surface. So, yeah.
Well, but y'all are getting into the criminal aspects of it,
of
fraudulently doctoring the cars. This is just, if I were still, I'm retired now. I'm pretty retired, coming up on 18 years of having sold the company. But when we started BGS, I mean, that was the industry norm is you grade the card as submitted. But I'm wondering, again, I would say somebody, if one of the graders announced that they were going to help you prep and clean the cards they're sent in, which is done with comics and done in a lot of other fields they're grading. If one of the companies announced they were going to do it, they would be blasted. And then every card that they graded before, during, or after would be regarded as maybe they've touched this one up in some way, even though it would all be legally. What I think will happen is that I think one of the grading companies will start quietly doing that, because it allows you to give higher grades for something that's a minor, dust, a tag, it puts this blower, they have this way to suck all the dust off the card. And even though they're not touching it with hands, they're not putting any chemicals on it. And so I think some of these card companies are going to quietly, just kind of take their white gloves and look at it, but they're not going to talk about it because it's going to make it look like they're cheating, when in reality, there's nothing illegal about it. Now, if you do some, like you said, Tony, some chemicals and things like that, that's additive, that's restoration, that's anytime you got chemicals. But I've used saliva. I had a little bit of a wax residue. I'd licked my finger and kind of wiped it off and then did a microfiber cloth. It's my card. I don't know that I got them out of a pack, but they're in my collection, and I submit them. I'm doing it. If BGS did that for me, it would really slow down the process, but they'd have a happy customer. I'd get a grade or two higher without the wax residue on the front end.
Would we have a pre and post cleaning grading, disparity?
Well,
I got my card graded pre-clean.
Any company that did that would be all their grading would be suspect if it became known that they did this prepping, and it would be looked at as kind of an unfair advantage, which I don't think it is, because there's companies setting up to do that, and they're taking a fee for doing that. If BGS said if we're going to start prepping your cards, it's an extra $5. Some people would sign up for that, but for every person that signed up for it, there'd be 100 that said, "How dare you do that?"
Yeah.
Let me ask you guys, how do you guys feel about the aspect of a card that's not visible to the naked eye in the grading process, where it's blown up, I don't know, 300x?
Are we talking a fingerprint or a scratch? Because I do feel differently.
Whatever it is, whatever, I don't care. You just can't see it to the naked eye, but then it's blown up, and
to me, if you believe in grading, the point is that they see more than the naked eye can. So that's part of the grading to me, is that it's going a step beyond the naked eye. But to me, there's also a difference between a fingerprint and a scratch. And like Dr. Becker was saying, and people in the chat, it's one thing to wipe off a fingerprint if you find it, and then there's another one to actually deal with a scratch, which I think crosses a line.
This is the other problem, and this will be a big topic for 2023. I don't know if you want to move into the end of the year and next year stuff, but in 2023, this will come to a head, because that is one of the concerns about computerized, like TAG and others that are doing computerized grading, where there's no human intervention, because there's two criticisms of computerized grading. One is it won't be good enough, and two, that it'll be too good. And the too good aspect is what Tony said. You'll be able to see with this incredible magnification things that no human eye could see. And why should we be penalized for that? When you can't even see it, you can't, even though there'll be a digital report that, hey, there's a, unevenness in the surface that what we saw with this, it'll get to the absurd, Tony. So I agree, but so that'll be something that TAG and those others that are doing that, and any of the traditional graders that are moving more into automated evaluations. If it's too good, I don't think collectors want that. They don't want to be downgraded for something they could never see. It's the reason we did the report card, is because collectors want to know why they got their grades. And if you got an 8 on surface and it's nothing that anybody can see, or it's a fingerprint that could easily be wiped off, I mean, it probably didn't take it down to an 8, but it's,
Gotcha. So
Well,
here's
we
the
just,
cheap
I'm sorry,
plug.
Tony. We just transitioned
real
to
quick.
22, 23.
Real quick.
So,
Yeah, real
no.
quick.
I want you to run with this, run through
No, no
20,
worries.
22, 23, all you.
Yeah, no worries. Real quick is so here's the cheap plug for Monday's episode of our podcast. Our guest addresses that very question because that was a big question Oz and I had. So yeah, check it out. He answers directly. We kind of really wanted to get into that because I was like, is this going to be a super machine that, so
who's your guest? Who's your guest, Tony?
Jeremy Lee.
Well, he's works for Tag now. Yeah,
He
cool.
does. So yeah, we sat down with him and we had a bunch of questions about tag and AI grading as a whole because it's something that's interesting, both just because somebody said in the chat grading is inconsistent, it's an opinion. So now if you automate it, is it going to be more consistent? But to that effect, is it going to be to the point where these super machines are now picking the cards apart where there's no shot at getting 10s, 9s, everything's just going to be, but yeah,
no,
he does
you're gonna get a 993.
That's true. Yeah. So
with
but,
1,000, I just don't even.
You get a 10-page report with it.
Yeah. So so we'll see. No, yeah, for sure, John. It's he can be a marketer or not unbiased opinion, but still, we just like to go to talk to the guy behind the company and see what his opinions are, and then we can form our opinion off of that. So,
all right. Well, Tony, looking back at 2022 and looking forward to 2023, I know it's been, I said at the beginning, you probably have a little whiplash. Kind of, what are your thoughts looking back, and what are you looking forward to, or what do you think the hobby's looking forward to moving forward?
Yeah, so 2022 is definitely a roller coaster for myself and Oz. We got to meet you, Danny. We shared the stage at the National, which was cool. It was the first time we're there, and we walk up on the stage, so that was interesting to say the least. But so definitely looking forward to doing that in the future. Who knows? But as far as collecting goes, I'm just gonna keep plugging away at that, finishing that Clemente run, which I said I'm going to the Philly show right after this. So I'm hoping to pick up 1 or 2 of those to keep that going. And as far as the hobby as a whole, I think we'll just keep seeing that consolidation. And yes, absolutely looking forward to another Super Bowl parade. We'll see. But yeah, I think we'll continue to see the consolidation of people's collections, companies, and all that stuff. And I think Dr. Beckett, it'll be though for the overall probably good of the hobby. So,
and for those who don't know, Tony is an Eagles fan, so that was the Super Bowl reference. Which
thought he was going to be coming down to Dallas.
Well, that might be where his season ends. We'll see. Dr. Beckett, your 2022 and 2023.
Well, we led off with the mergers, acquisitions, teamwork, partnerships, things like that. And the benefit of that, regardless of what you call it, gives those entities more marketing and joint marketing muscle and budget and interest in really trying to get more customers for their bigger entity. So I think that bodes well. I think we're going to have more collectors and activity in 2023 than we did in 2022, just because of that. So that's healthy, And if there's unhealthy things like Ziggy was saying, they're going to get bought out, or they're going to somebody's going to take them out. But there's some very strong players in our industry. Fanatics is going to continue to market, and their business plan requires a double-digit increase in the number of collectors next year, and they're going to put their money where their mouth is, because that's part of it. So I think all these other entities we've talked about, they're going to get a piece of it, and just the whole making the pie bigger. Everybody wants to make the pie bigger, and then they want to get the biggest slice.
I pretty much agree with that. In fact, Fanatics announced they're opening a store at Oriole Park in my hometown. But for those of you who haven't seen, they don't grade, but they actually slab their own cards with the Fanatics slab. So when you talk about merchandise, I'm actually going to call their slabs under that merchandise title. So I expect the Fanatics store not to sell baseball cards traditionally, but there could be not just the uniforms and the hats, but I could see a time where there's actually unopened wax, and maybe some other things as part of the store, not necessarily singles or things like that. This past year for me, has been making some amazing friends and some great relationships. Personally, there were some health challenges with my wife, and if it wasn't for this hobby, I don't know if I would have an outlet. So I'm just thankful for all my friends in 2022 and for 2023. I am just looking for brighter skies. I think smart people have a lot of great things coming forward. There's a lot of smart people coming into this hobby, and I think that's been one of the benefits of the pandemic. And although we might have a little resumption to normal pricing, I don't think that's a downturn for the hobby. I think it's all going to be smart people and the cream rising to the crop, and I think it's going to lead to good things in the future for collectors. So I'll leave it at that. Any final words from anybody before we head out on my last? Maybe I have one more in 2022.
Just very quickly on the people talk about junk slabs, and if they thought that a year ago, next year is going to be worse. There are going to be a lot of slabs out there. As you said, Fanatics is doing their own. But if you think of slabs not just as a get-rich-quick scheme, but an anti-theft and a protective, then you can see why if Fanatics has cards in the Orioles team store at the ballpark or at Lids, it's harder to steal, and there's some anti-theft protection of a graded card or a sealed box than a loose card. I don't think they're going to have dollar boxes even if they're dollar boxes of Orioles at there, because it's just too easy to do that. So I think you're going to see, you're going to have another million. You're going to have more than 1 million cards will be graded. Probably 2 million will be graded, and they're good. Well, what is it? They're doing every month.
Yeah.
So we're in a situation where those cards have to go somewhere. They're not all going into collections. They're going to be. You'll see more and more, not dollar boxes, but $5 and $10 boxes of slabbed and $20 boxes of slabbed cards. So get ready and don't complain. It's just enjoy the fact that with grading prices being down, people are going to grade cheaper cards. They have that choice, and they're going to make mistakes, and they weigh a lot.
Yeah.
Aerobic points. You get the increased muscles.
I can't follow that. So on that note, just want to thank everybody in the comments today. We had a lot of great conversation. I want to thank all the Hobby Hotline people who jumped on. It was good to have Ziggy on for a little bit. Michael's always great. I want to thank Tony. I want to thank Dr. Beckett. And thank you, Philly Joe. We appreciate it. And to everybody, we're going to get out on time. Sorry about the USA final today, but that's why we were here, to make everybody a little happier. So have a good one, guys, and we're going to head out.